What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about some of the tips and tricks of things that made me successful with the On3 turbo kits that I've had on stock blocks, 351s, etc. So I wanted to share some of the important details, and you actually use Project Hot Wheels as an example, and point out some things that you should do before and after you buy a turbo kit to make yourself successful. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like and sub, and I do appreciate everybody, and let's get into it. All right, so first things first, I apologize about the mess in the garage. We got some things going on here. I got a lot of, seats that I'm reconditioning. We got, cranks and camshafts we're reconditioning. And, we just put some new shoes on the black car. But we'll save that for another day and on another video. Anyways, so the first thing you're going to want to do when you take this On3 kit out of the box is you're going to want to inspect the headers. Now, obviously, this is a used header. This is not new. I don't need the other header because I've never had a problem with the driver's side. This is the passenger side. And this is a good example of what happens to it over time. It's mild steel. There's a lot of pressure in this area here. So you can see here that on this header, it's blowed out. This was actually on my 351. But what you want to do when you get these headers is you're going to want to do some maintenance to them, okay? It's like the #1 thing you're going to want to do. First of all, you're going to want to put this on a belt sander and make sure this is flat. I found a lot of them to be a little uneven. Second, you're going to want to get this planed, and if you have a really good belt sander, this will actually all come out flat. I've found a lot of these flanges warped, and it's not On3's fault. It has nothing to do with the quality or whatever. I mean, I'm not gonna knock on them. You guys get what you get. I've been beating these kits up for years, and all we do is we have a bunch of fun with them. The third thing you're going to want to do to these headers right out the box is weld them. You're going to want to weld this here, and you're going to want to weld this here, and probably maybe put new gussets here. So you're going to want to do, if you do the maintenance now on these headers now, you ain't going to have to worry about it blowing out. I did it on Project Hot Wheels. I've done it on the Black Cars header. It's just it's proper maintenance. It's making sure that you're not going to have to take this header off every year because it's got to blow it out. It's got a section that's blowed out. Take both headers, grind them both down with wire wheels, and repaint them high heat VHT paint. With a pair of torches, wherever my torches are at, we'll get them real hot with a pair of torches, and then we'll just lay the paint on. It's kind of a cheater way to get them cured. You could also ceramic coat them. There's all kind of things you can do, but you definitely want to do the reinforcing to the header, and you want to plane and make sure both headers have a flat flange. And you're going to want to make sure this turbo has a flat flange so you don't have to worry about any leaks. Another thing I wanted to add real quick before we stop, you can see all this orange on here. What I like to run is I honestly like to run the solid copper gaskets that Mr. Gasket has. And I like to run the orange RTV. All right, so the second thing that's on my list of things that need to be done with the On3 kit is, folks, get yourself a quality set of injectors. Prime example, I had somebody do that with an On3 kit, said they were Ford, but they weren't. We couldn't get the injector pulses right. We couldn't understand why the tune was all jacked up. Don't do it. Had a set of 42s, and we just recently found out that we're capping them out. But Ford has a Ford emblem on all their injectors. And green, neon green, is the 42-pound injectors. Now, I would suggest if you got a little bit, peppier of a motor, like a 351, a 347 to 331, something with some aluminum heads, I would definitely go with some 60s, maybe even 80s, because a good tuner will be able to turn your injectors down. Get yourself a quality set of injectors so you don't have to worry about tunability issues or whatever. So let's keep going. Okay, so here we go with the next mod. Guys, if you're gonna be running a turbo, you gotta feed the sumbitch. I made a nice video on it, feed your beast. It's in my playlist or whatever. I'm really surprised that it hasn't gotten as more clicks than it does, but maybe it's just because people don't know it's there. But I pretty much went through a long video on how to wire this pump in to your tank, this hanger, and how you make a relay and how you run it from your battery and everything. Guys, this is a keystone in a turbo. I actually have a 340 pump here. This is just an example. This is what you're going to want to do. and I've ran two 10 gauges. I know they're both red. I ran out of black. I ran two 10 gauges through this top of this hanger. Okay, got rid of this. I can't use both ends, but I got rid of this here, which is the connector, because I didn't need this anymore. Because on your harness, there's 4 wires. 2 for the sending unit, 2 are for the pump. So I drilled 2 holes, came through there with grommets so it didn't rub. See? I got a 340 pump with a, you know, with 10 gauge wire. And this connects into a relay. It grounds itself, and it pumps plenty of fuel up to 550, 600 horsepower to the wheels through stock rails. So keep that in mind. Feed your beast. Okay? So we've already talked about injectors. We've already talked about pump. Guess what's next? We already talked about the pump. We've already talked about the injectors. We didn't change the factory. We didn't change the factory lines that come from the back to the front. We didn't even change the tank. We didn't do none of that stuff. Here's the next point I'm trying to make. Get yourself an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Now, a lot of you guys are going to run stock rails. I know you are. Get yourself an adjustable fuel pressure regulator and run that with vacuum off. You're going to run that at about 40, 42, maybe even 45. I like to run mine a little rich at like 42, 45, but don't tell Dave. He'll be mad at me. But, you know, this is obviously Project Hot Wheels, and this is a proven combo, and you checked out all the playlists. This car made 500 wheel, or will, it could, but we're out of clutch and we're out of fuel because it's just 42s only go up so high. So make sure you guys take care of that. Have a fuel pressure regulator. Have a little gauge on it so you know what it is. Feed your beast. Okay, so when we're talking about turbos, we're talking about boost. And when we're talking about wastegates and we're talking about turbos, wastegates regulate the boost on the hot side of the turbo. Am I right? Okay. Well, one way to get more power, obviously in a turbo system, is to increase the boost. And one way to increase the boost is either you manually change your spring boost controller. Now, the ones that are out there, all the cheap ones, man, don't buy that shit. Buy yourself a good adjustable boost controller. Just like injectors, the shit is important because you can blow your motor up if you got some cheap ass, you know, compressor wannabe regulator. Don't do it. So what I like to run with is I always trusted Grimspeed, and they've always been good. And it's got so many different levels of clicks. You can see lots of good instruction. Comes from the block, or comes from my vacuum block, goes into the into the regulator or the boost controller, and then this line goes all the way to my wastegate. So basically all that does is constrict the amount of vacuum that's closing the wastegate. You understand? So, all right, just like with the fuel, spark is super important too. So I'm not going to take the time to take this spark plug out, but you're going to want to run your plugs at about 23 gap. 23 gap has always been kind of a sweet spot for me at around, it doesn't really start blowing spark out, so you should be fine. So you want to gap your plugs at 23. 24 is fine, whatever you guys feel comfortable with. But I wanted to show you another thing, is you want to protect your spark plugs. You can buy these boots here. See these? I know it's kind of bad lighting, but actually it's really good with the sun. I have really good Taylor wires for high heat, and I got this DEI on both sides, especially on this side. So basically what I did when I installed it, naturally I don't think I need to tell you that you need to wrap your downpipe, right? But naturally you can see here, I've actually zip tied my 4 wires nice and even. See the zip tie trick? I'll make a video of that if you want me to see you do it. But you can see that there's a nice gap and they're not going to fry. But all these spark plugs are all covered with the DEI boots. Very, very, very important, because you want to protect your spark plugs. I mean, that goes without saying pretty much for any headers for that matter. But buy the spark plug boots. They don't come in the kit. Protect your plugs. Zip tie your stuff up so the damn downpipe don't melt them to death. Because, I mean, that's nothing but a headache. I can promise you that. All right, so let's talk about front accessories. This is kind of something I'm going to add to it because I think it's kind of relevant or whatever. So as you can see here on Project Hot Wheels, that we The kit always comes with an alternator relocation bracket. You can see right here, this little piece right here, and the bolts and stuff. And it basically makes the alternator come in more so it doesn't hit the turbo here. What I always like to buy in addition to is this power steering bracket. It comes with this aluminum one that comes in the back of the head, and it mounts the power steering, and it basically moves the power steering pump up to pretty much where the AC was. So this is for those folks that aren't going to be running AC and aren't going to be running smog and aren't going to be running any of the other accessories, but are still going to want to daily drive the shit out of their car. And that's pretty much what this is set up for. You know, I set this up to where it has a good 3G alternator conversion because I'm running dual fans, the contour fans, and then I move the power steering up because I like my power steering, and then I got the factory crank and I got the factory water pump, and then I adjust my belt with this turnbuckle here that comes with the kit. So I think that it was relevant to add that to it. You don't need to buy that bracket. You could use the pulley that you have. When people who are running AC obviously disregard this, but this is the way I always like to set my cars up. So I still got good, I got an excellent upgrade in my alternator. I still got power steering, and it's a shorter belt. It's like a 68-inch belt. So that's up to you, but I wanted to add, and probably one of the most important thing is venting your motor. So as you can see here on Project Hot Wheels, we've pretty much didn't reinvent the wheel. Same as we built with the black car when it was younger, and the other two-tone blue, ultra blue car that we turboed, and even the coupe that we did. So, and you can see is we actually made a vent just like the other side. This used to have a cap on it, but now it's just a screw-in air filter. This allows my crankcase to vent, okay? And I know there's a sock over it so there's no oils get through, and I only have to change this ever so often. You see what I mean? So very important that your engine breathes, because it needs to breathe the crankcase out, especially under boost. Now the other side, we actually had to fabricate this, and you can see it's just I put a bunch of steel wool inside there to keep the oil out. That actually works pretty good, and the oil just goes right back down in this little hole. Kind of, you can see here I TIG weld it. Pretty nice, huh? Pretty good idea. Just clears the intake. So both sides of my motor are vented, and even the back. We got rid of the PCV. Very important, because I don't want crankcase pressure. So I'll pull this out and show you. You can see here. Boom. This little thing I got at AutoZone, it's a little baby filter. It's a cleaned out PCV, so you can see all the way through, or whatever. There's no rattle can. You want this thing just to vent. See, there's not really any oil on it, because I'm letting it vent. And there's also a little grommet that's down in here. It's inside the intake. Okay, that's got a lot of steel wool. It's like factory steel wool thing. I don't even know what it's called, but those are really good additions to your turbo kit. It's definitely something that you want to do. You want to vent your turbo, you want to vent your motor, or you're going to blow it up. It's just going to blow up like a grenade, and it's just going to be full of air. So it's got to release somewhere. So both valve covers are released, and then the back of the motor, and it can come up, the crankcase pressure could come up through and just exit the motor. So this is the last thing I'm going to say for the video, and I do appreciate you watching it thus far if you have. We're going to require a little bit of fabricating and welding, just like it did kind of with the passenger header I talked about earlier in the video. You want to make sure that you got a big enough mount, 1.5 inches or so to feed your wastegate, especially when you start really pumping some power through these on-3, these headers and this crossover, because this is only 2.5 inch. So if that's too small, that's just going to choke. So you're going to have to maybe re-weld a different type of flange on there. What I did is I made it 1.5 inches. You can see, reinforced it, and then I just welded the other flange back on. Second thing is I got rid of the ball and socket. Now, I mentioned this before in my other videos, but basically I bought a 4-inch forced induction specific flex coupler. And I actually welded 2 slip fits and I cut the ball and socket out of the crossover and created my own little section there. And the nice thing is about that is when you take the crossover down, if you ever have to, it's always going to fit exactly the same way the motor was. Now, the bad part about it is, and you can see, is I've had to restructure it a couple times, but that's okay. But, I made sure that the flange was flat and it was clean on the V-band on both sides, and then I slip fitted it and tack welded it, brought it down, and then I re-welded it. So I know it's a lot of information, but I would suggest you not doing that unless you have some sort of friend and or yourself, is, you know, you can just be an amateur with the welding. You ain't got to be perfect. Nobody's really going to see that anyways. And this is kind of for those people who run in sump. If you're going to run sump, put yourself a drain in, bros. So good. You change fuels, you can have multiple tunes, and don't drain next to the feed. I actually got my drain over here, and I've had no aeration problems ever since I've done that. Now, those are just kind of some things. You know, I mounted my Magna Fuel over here on the plastic. It does work. It's fine as long as your straps are, you know, I ain't got no problem with it falling off. So anyways, if you found any of this stuff helpful, I'm sorry the video went 15 minutes. I super appreciate everybody's time. Make sure you hit that like, sub, leave comment below if you have any questions, and see you in the next video.